Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is James MacArthur bringing you an exclusive breaking news report. At 9:05 this morning, we tweeted out via the account that a stabbing took place in the 700 block of North Rose Street. Several hours later this afternoon, other news outlets ran the story, and it was determined by that point that it was indeed a domestic dispute. While trying to investigate this story and get to the bottom of it and get the information out to complete the report that is on the website right now at baltimorespectator.com, a very strange thing happened. After getting quite a bit of information from sources close to the investigation and having the article mostly completed, just doing little fact checking here and there, proofreading and making sure there's continuity and flow in the story. Well, the hard work, the ground pounding paid off, and the constantly putting my phone number out there, as I always do, because I received a call from no one other than the actual subject of the story herself. Some of what is in the story is not quite accurate, as has been clarified by the individual who called. I didn't want to spend a lot more time straightening it out all now. There is a disclaimer or two above and below the story that it is a breaking news item and it is subject to change. Some of that change, some of the updates, you will learn exclusively in this Spreaker live podcast. Okay, let's see here. And bear in mind, I spoke for quite a while with the young lady, and I have pages full of notes in front of me. So this is not rehearsed. This is you're basically receiving it just moments after I got it. So you'll have to bear with me as I try to sort all this out and present it to you in a manner that makes sense. Of course, if something is not clear or if I need to repeat something, I will be monitoring the Twitter. So at Balto Spectator, you can ask me a question there or throw in your comments. So let's begin. It is a domestic incident. We won't call him the victim. We will call him the deceased. Had an ex parte order taken out against him by the young lady involved. His name is in the article now. And it's Mr. Sean Brown, 40 years old. They do have a child together. He had broken into the house and pulled out a gun on this young lady just the night before, just on Friday night. There was a lot of screaming, some shoving, and she was able to convince him to put the gun away, which he did, and he stormed out of the place. The Baltimore police were notified of the situation. Reports were taken. A warrant was actually issued at 7 a.m. this morning for Mr. Brown, who, on numerous charges. I haven't been able to confirm what they all are now. Of course, less than 2 hours later, Brown showed up at the house. He did kick the door in and made numerous threats. And eventually, with the struggle that ensued, the subject, the young lady involved in the story, defended herself with a knife. But there's a lot more details involved, and it's much more nuanced than that. Interestingly enough, there were police standing by about a block or two away from the house because he was expected to return. Apparently, there may have been a shift change and a gap in timing between the officers that were posted nearby and the new ones arriving. And it was during this gap in coverage that Brown made his return to the residence. The victim, and we will call her the victim for a purpose of this broadcast. The victim stated to me that she had been trying to get away from him for a long time and had moved to numerous locations throughout the area, including surrounding counties. And it seemed like no matter where she went, Brown would eventually catch up to her and would terrorize her. She claims that he called her from many different phone numbers. She has over 20 voicemail messages of his threats. One of the last things he said to her last night after he broke into the house and produced a gun is, and we're quoting, "Bitch, you got 5 seconds to get into this truck. Bitch, your days are numbered." And these were the direct threats issued by Mr. Brown to the victim. Now, this is before he returned. At some point, when he came back and kicked in the door, the struggle that it started inside the house, it actually spilled out onto the street. And several bystanders got involved, including the sister of the victim. And she struggled with Brown, while the victim, his original intended victim, fled to temporary safety. At this point, a male neighbor engaged in a fight with him, and he was able to overcome that male neighbor. All this time, the gun was believed to have been in his waistband, although it was not produced, the same gun that was produced just the night prior. Okay, let's see here. Make sure I give you this all in proper order. After Brown successfully managed to escape both the sister and the male neighbor who were trying to subdue him, he was able to then catch back up to the victim, his ex-girlfriend, we can call her that, the mother of his child, and he dragged her through the alleyway. The alleyway in the picture on the website at the odd side of the 700 block of North Rose Street. And his truck was parked there, and he demanded that she get into the truck. The victim said to me she knew that if she got into that truck, it would probably be the last act that she'd ever do, and she was determined she would not go into that truck. The whole time, unbeknownst to Brown, the victim had a knife concealed about her body. She emphatically states she never wanted to use it and hoped that it would not come to that, and it was her hopes that she would be able to convince him verbally to release her and not have things go into a gravely extreme state. At some point, while she's being forced physically into the truck and physically resisting, verbally resisting, she became in fear of her life after he pulled out a brick from his side pocket and bashed her in the face with it. At this point, the victim retrieved the concealed knife that was on her person, and, as she put it, began to repeatedly stab him. While stabbing him, she was able to get away from his grip and started to run down the street. As she was running down the street with the knife in her hand, Baltimore police arrived on scene. The first officer was a female officer who drew her weapon and said, "Get on the ground." The female victim immediately dropped to the ground. Brown, who had been stabbed multiple times by this point, was still standing. The female officer repeated in a loud commanding voice to get on the ground, and Sean collapsed onto the ground, Sean Brown. And at that point, he was not able to move on his own, as he was bleeding massively and suffering from the injuries of the stabbing. City paramedics arrived within a short time, and attempts were made to resuscitate him, to revive him, and none of them seemed successful. He was transported to a nearby hospital where, as the story states, he was pronounced dead. The victim was initially detained and taken to homicide. And after lengthy interviews and being there basically all day and being debriefed, the determination was made by homicide detectives that her actions were out of self-defense and no charges would be filed. And at this point, I think I've probably covered most of the details that needed to be shared to fill in the gaps and update what's not in the story on the website. I will pause in case there are any questions. There is more information I have here, which will definitely help fill out the story, the written version of the story. But I think I've provided quite a bit of information here on just a story that just has so many twists and turns to it. Particularly that Monday there is a hearing scheduled for this TRO, this temporary restraining order. Now, of course, the antagonist is deceased. One of the things he would often say to her once he learned of the restraining order is, "Hey, I'm not afraid of a piece of paper." And evidently he wasn't, and that's why this attack took place today. I thank you for tuning in here to this special breaking news report from the Baltimore Spectator. Do check back to the website for updates and check back every day for the news stories and the news and views that I deliver at baltimorespectator.com. The phone number that allows you to reach me directly, talk or text is preferred, is 410-205-6397, 410-205-NEWS. The email address is macarthurmedia@gmail.com. And what else do I need to tell you? You got to excuse me. It's been a long day and my thoughts are all over the place. And I certainly was thrown off by receiving this phone call when I did. But I'm glad I was able to get this information to share with you. Well, until next time, folks, this is James MacArthur reminding you to be blessed, be well, and be more. Good night, folks.
Looking everywhere. Hard times in the city, in a hard town.